I had been a loner since I was a kid. When I did have friends, I was usually helping them out of a jam. When I finally married, I married a woman with a lot of problems. While we were married, I constantly grazed through the painful times, feeling worse and worse about myself and my weight. Frequently, the only pleasant times in our house were spent planning and preparing meals, but the meals themselves were battlegrounds. So at times, I expressed my anger by withdrawing from food and meals. Other times, I ate to stuff my anger. The eating was also hidden. Besides grazing all day, I would stock up on soothing things for night times and eat alone while my wife was out. At one point, I could no longer lose weight or control my eating. Twice, a doctor told me that I was in danger of bringing on diabetes because of my obesity. He said I had to lose weight. I realized that I was killing myself with food, and I knew that that was insane.
Tonight on Bay Area Psychology, we're going to continue our look at nutrition and fitness with a focus on men and eating disorders. There was a time when men were not identified as compulsive eaters or bulimics or even anorexics. Yet over the last 10 or 15 years, we've seen an increase in males in treatment as men have been willing to come forward and ask for help. Men identify bulimic eating controlled with compulsive exercise, or compulsive eating leading to physical consequences. Men who don't eat at all to cope with fears of layoffs and aging. Tonight, we have with us Larry Campagnoni, a licensed counselor with Concern EAP in Mountain View and also in private practice. And Larry, I'm so glad you could be with us this evening. Thank you for coming on to talk about a subject which has actually been requested by some people in the community because they feel like, and I think this is true, that we don't talk about men and food issues very often. We don't see it in the media. And I thought this would be a perfect time for us to take a look at it and talk about it.
I think it's a great time.
Okay.
And it's true that we don't know about this problem enough. So it's great to have your program and to have this conscious raising about men and or eating disorders.
Okay. Now, I would imagine that in your practice, you are referred a fair number of men who may occasionally mention this as an issue for them. And I'm wondering, when they come into your office, is that the presenting problem? I mean, do they say, Larry, I've got a problem with food, or is it usually something else that, and then you find out that there is an eating issue?
When most men that present are presenting, they come into the office and present themselves as having some other problem. It may be alcohol or recovery and being in drugs, or it may be a marital problem or parenting problem. And often the eating issue will come out as a problem in the context of how they cope with these other problems.
Okay. Okay, so maybe the person isn't even aware himself that he might be abusing food. He just sees it as just part of what he's doing just to get by.
Yeah, just part of what a man does in our society to get by.
Okay.
Kind of like his right to eat.
That's right. Well, and there's part of that, you know, the mythology we have about that you know, women, you know, the way to a man's heart is through his stomach, so cooking, and the idea that it's okay for men to be husky or a little bit larger, and in your experience, how does a man usually become aware that food may be a problem for him?
I think most men become aware by their primary care physicians that will say, you know, you have a medical problem, you need to lose weight, you're, as we saw in the clip, you're on the verge of becoming a diabetic.
Okay.
So that's usually one of the places that a man will seek help.
Okay.
That makes it very public. Now, most men are aware they have a problem before then, but they're not willing to admit it in most cases.
Okay. Can you give us a little insight about why they don't want to admit it?
Well, I think in our society, we get the message that it's okay for a man to kind of be a man. And that has lots of different messages. But we don't hear a lot of promotion or advertising that a man should look a certain way.
Okay.
For women in our society, there's a much clearer message that women are supposed to be a certain way.
Absolutely.
And we see that in the advertising, and then we see the diet industry that markets primarily to women, not to men.
Though I must say I've noticed an upsurge in the Nordic track and weight gym, sort of home gym ads, where they have these Adonis-like men come out. And I'm wondering from a male perspective, I mean, what's your hit on that when one of these guys comes out there and advertises it? I mean, do men feel a pressure in needing to maybe conform to that?
Well, I think we do. I know I have. And then I usually just flip to some other station.
Okay.
Because I think most men will say, I've just worked all day. I don't want to have to work to lose this weight.
Okay. So really seeing that if I need to do something about my weight, it's going to be a hassle.
Right.
Right. Okay. And probably linking that with deprivation.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because I think food in our society, especially for men, is often used as a reward for what they've been doing, which is working hard.
Okay.
So I get this reward, or I get this reward for being a good dad or a good husband or good son or good whatever. I get rewarded with food.
Well, and you know that there's part of a tradition in our history in America where, particularly back when we were a little more agricultural, I mean, men did work hard all day. I know my grandfather got up at 5 in the morning and ate a large breakfast and headed out and did farming. I mean, that's what he did, and came back and ate large again and went out and farmed some more, you know. And my father was raised that way, that whole idea that, you know, you need to eat to keep up your physical strength. And I think we haven't adjusted to the more sedentary desktop living that I think we've become more normal.
And that's true for most men, because most men aren't working as hard as they used to in terms of physical activity, burning off those calories for the meals they're eating. And the other part I think that's important in our society today is the meals that we eat are much more fat-laden.
Yeah.
So we're taking in more calories, maybe same size we used to, but we're not burning it off.
Okay, we're not moving around.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at some issues that may come up for men around food. We have some common traits of compulsive eaters. And this is from Feeding the Empty Heart with Barbara McFarland and Thais Baker Bauman. One of the issues they raise is that sometimes men will feel worthless or powerlessness, or perhaps an issue around having a strong need to control their world. Maybe having difficulty expressing feelings, even anger, even confused feelings about their sexuality. And I have that list in front of me, so if you didn't memorize it, that's okay. Let's take a look at the first. In terms of, and I think they go together, powerlessness and worthlessness and a strong need for control. When men come into your office, I mean, are these issues that they raise for you?
Well, they do. Now, they may not actually use those words because men don't normally seek mental health services.
Okay, that's true.
And men access physicians less than women do too. So often part of when they get in, their disease of their eating disorders are much more progressed often than many women.
Oh, okay.
And as a result, part of what I have to do is help make the counseling environment a safe place so they can even begin to explore these issues and then come up with a word that says, oh, this is what powerlessness is. This is what I've been feeling since my childhood or my adulthood or in my work.
Okay.
And so part of the counseling process for a man is often to help them to identify what these attributes that were up on the screen a few minutes ago really are at an experiential level, and they can name it.
Okay. So maybe carrying it around an awareness, but not having a name for it, or not able to say, this is an issue for me.
Right. And then if they could name it, where would I speak about it? Because this issue for a man to be in our society to feel powerless involves a lot of shame for men.
Yeah.
So they aren't going to go down and talk about at the local bar that I'm shameful that I'm 100 pounds overweight, or that I ate up my child's desserts, or the other kind of compulsions that would come out in the home. So it's kept secret, hidden behind the shame.
Yeah. Well, and in fact, our opening speaker did talk about the idea of eating in secret. You know, eating after people had gone to sleep. One of the eating disorders I mentioned was bulimia, and it just in general, I know that bulimia has to do with a large intake of calories at one sitting, and sometimes it involves purging, but other times it is excessive exercise, or can be another way, laxatives perhaps, of sort of removing those calories from the body.
It's estimated that in our society that about 10% of the people that are bulimic are men. So we know that most of the awareness then in our society goes towards women because they're 80% 90%, excuse me,
Right.
of the people that we've at least identified as the problem. But many more women come forward with the problem.
Right.
And I think, like with other health issues in our society, as we begin to create more awareness, we're going to actually see that this population of men is a lot larger than 10%.
Okay. So in fact, it's not that there's going to be more bulimic men, but there's more men who are willing to say, I'm
come forward,
wrestling with bulimia. Now I know, speaking of wrestling, I know that for a lot of men I've worked with, that their first experience of eating disorders came to, with high school and junior high sports. Things like being in wrestling and needing to maintain a certain body weight, or packing on food to make the football team. Has that been, have you heard that as well?
Yeah, when we do the history of a man with an eating disorder, we often find that there's a long history. It isn't something that just happened in the past month or the past year, but it often has its roots into childhood. And for men, it will be in the area of sports, especially those sports that involve weight categories.
Okay.
So a man may then have to exercise to burn off those calories, say a high school wrestler, or may literally starve themselves to get to that weight category so they can perform at what they think is a more competitive weight, as opposed to being bumped up to the next level and performing.
Okay.
And some of that pressure is societal, because the coach says, I want you in this weight category and you have to lose 10 pounds. So I think with a lot of the weight issues with men, especially in the area of sports, it isn't just the image in the man's mind, but the image that comes from the coach or from the peer pressure of the team to be a certain way at a certain weight. If you're going to let her, you got to do it in this category because
Right.
John is going to be in this category. So that puts extra pressure to produce and to create that weight loss.
Well, and also that it doesn't take into account people's actual body reality.
Right.
You know, it's just more of a, this is